Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spinner Rack, and we also have
Calvin Ellis, ready to rock.
today. I was looking on Bleeding Cool, and I heard about Void Rivals. I knew nothing about this, but what do you know about this book, Cal?
Well, previously, Transformers, G.I. Joe, Hasbro Properties, the license was at IDW Comics. IDW Comics lost the license, and it was picked up by Robert Kirkman over at Image Comics. Now, this was pretty secret until Void Rivals came out, and even then, people didn't know what was going on with Void Rivals until one of the covers showed fan favorite Transformer Jetfire. And then all hell broke loose, and everybody started buying up copies. So Robert Kirkman will be the person shepherding, stewarding the Transformers and G.I. Joe universe going forward, and we are introduced to it in the pages of Void Rivals #1.
Okay, so have you seen it yet?
Have I read it?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna take my time.
Okay.
Robert Kirkman, I know his Invincible stuff. I know Walking Dead. Uh, was it Astonishing Wolfman and some of the other things he's done? He's done a bunch of stuff. He's got a lot of different books out there, but primarily Transformers. G.I. Joe, I'm not as big of a fan of, but primarily Transformers. I'm gonna wait until I hear some stuff before I start putting in some attention into what he's actually doing because it's not hard to mess up that particular franchise. I've seen the movies which keep coming out. The movies are regularly trash, but they make money. So you would never think that at the end of the day. So I want to see what he. I'm going to give a few issues before I actually chime in. Even though I am looking to get there's a variant cover for Void Rivals #1 of Jetfire. That is a must-have for a Transformer fan like myself. But otherwise, I will wait and see.
So is it like a G.I. Joe thing and the Transformers are somewhere in there, but is it a full on G.I. Joe versus Transformers type
It's
book?
both. It's a shared universe of GI Joe and the Transformers.
Oh, okay. So in this Bleeding Cool kind of article, they play, in my mind, kind of the idiot's version of marketing, right? Because you have it's saying by prior sales of Robert Kirkman's thing, hey, why would we order on the big numbers of this Void Rivals? Why would we kill ourselves? We look at firepower, it sells in this amount, so we'll buy it in this amount. And then next thing you know, once people heard about it, people coming to the store basically complaining to this guy saying, hey, why don't you have it? You should have ordered more of this. It's like, oh, if they told us, and it's like that goes to the problem since '86, where it's like, hey, if there's nothing to promote, we can't sell the Star line. We can't sell what else would be? We can't sell Roger Stern's what's the name? Doctor Strange. It's these things where a lot of the comic stores kind of don't, like I guess if you play spades and you say, well, this is this Void Rivals. I don't think I can get it. It's a possible. It's like I'm not even gonna. I can't order that. I'll order a couple of these and see what happens. And it's like, oh, sweat. It's a. We didn't know what the hell this was. They needed to tell us so we know to promote it, or else. Well, that's the thing. Sometimes, like GI Joe, and then it relates. GI Joe #2, the way comics things are. #1, you buy this amount of it. They're like, oh, it did well. We're gonna print out a larger version of that, and then issue 2 goes out, and people buy more. It's like, no, we already bought less because we didn't know what the sales were going to be. So we cut the slash the orders, and now GI Joe at least in '86, GI Joe #2 was a big seller. So it kind of goes back to that point where it's just like, you know, I guess what else can you do? But I think the hard part for me is that there's no selling in the stores. It's just kind of like, yeah, Robert Kirkman. I mean, I know he was hiding the Walking Dead, but Firepower isn't doing anything. They should have told us Jetfire's in there. It's like, well, that's what got you. Now you got to say, well, because you're struggling now. It's like saying you overorder it and it doesn't sell afterwards. Now we're stuck with these other books. Well, that's the cost of doing business. It's hard to say, but I just didn't like the. What are your thoughts? I didn't like how it's kind of saying the marketing is, yeah, basic marketing is voided, where it's like you can't really do what I've talked about. So, sorry, what are your thoughts? I just started chiming off again.
Surprised that Robert Kirkman got this property. So I don't know what pitch he made, but I'm really surprised that he got this property. As usually it's I mean, GI Joe Transformers usually falls with some spot with with more publishing clout
Mm-hmm.
than say Robert Kirkman. Creator clout, sure. Publishing clout, they usually get with like an IDW, Marvel Comics, somebody who can actually put these things out at the end of the day. And because they don't want to be in the, I don't know if you heard about what happened with Transformers when they were with Dreamwave.
No. What about what happened? What was wrong with it?
Yeah, when Transformers was with Dreamwave Comics, the deal that they had with Hasbro pretty much said they were going to get paid one way or the other, and then the books weren't selling, and Hasbro was pretty much on the hook for the
Mm-hmm.
monies that was going out to Dreamwave, and the comics weren't selling. So since then, Hasbro's like, look, if these books aren't selling, that license comes back to us. Meaning, if it's not profitable, you don't get the license anymore. That's pretty much the way it's been. So with IDW, I think that started to be the case. So they, the license was taken from them, but then it's given to Robert Kirkman. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what publishing clout Robert Kirkman actually has for these books. And then you mentioned the first thing was like, okay, we're going to put them out in the form of Void Rivals, but Void Rivals isn't going to tell you that Transformers are in this book. It's going to be, we're going to surprise it on you. And then, of course, everybody's going to do the mad scramble, with the exception of me. I just want that one cover with Jetfire on it. But, then again, it becomes the same thing where guys are like, okay, Void Rivals 2, we're going to make certain we order. We're going to over order. And the big rush for Void Rivals 1 is that nobody knew anything. Not that the Transformers or the G.I. Joe were in them. That didn't sell the book. It was that last second, oh, what? And then everybody starts running, and then everybody starts running for it. So I'm again, this is not who I would expect to have the Transformers. It's sort of like He-Man. He-Man is usually with somebody who can publish that book and put it out. And well, he'll go from it's usually DC Comics. He's been with DC Comics a ton of times. Right now, he's with Dark Horse. But if you usually have to have some publishing clout in order to start doing He-Man books. If you don't, it's not happening. So it'll be interesting to see. Um, I mean, from somebody who's interested in how things work from the publishing standpoint, the industry, it'll be, I'm interested in seeing how things go forward. For someone who's a Transformers fan, I'm probably going to hedge my bet and wait for a few issues to go by before I start reading it and putting any money behind it.
Well, I mean, this is not even going. This is not a response or a reboot to a but to that. The thing that's interesting to me is that you know that's why I didn't feel that Robert Kirkman should have done a speech about creator-owned stuff. That from now on, I'm going to be doing creator-owned stuff, and it's just like, well, I mean, you're a writer, and if and you come a company and something comes across your eye, which is like something that you like or want, even though this approach is well, I can't tell what this is from these covers, but it's that's why I wouldn't say that hard edge on being doing only creator owned stuff, because at some points, it's the way the business goes. You could find yourself doing what was it? I think what Rob Liefeld almost did to Freedom Fighters. Like, so it's like I would have never expected that, and he was gonna do those characters that used to be at DC, those Freedom Fighter characters, which was also the Uncle Sam and the rest of those guys in the Phantom Girl. So I would have never expected to see him that way. So it's like trying to say, well, outside of Todd McFarlane, he's the only one who's I'll give you a cover, but I'm not touching any other properties. So, but as a businessman, it makes sense. The Transformers are still a hot commodity. Movies keep coming out. It would be interesting to see what the overseas market is for comics, because it was interesting being in France and seeing comic books and seeing it all the same comic books with in French in a different language. So it's like they're mass producing these things still. I'm surprised. So yeah, I was just surprised to hear that he was doing a property, since he did a speech, which I felt he shouldn't have done a speech, because ultimately he ran into trouble because Tony Moore, who obviously designed those characters and the same looks that they gave the characters in the movie, sorry, in the TV show, then he has to, wind up, giving him some money, because it's like that's what the whole creator, like the creator own thing is having that sort of agreement. But they dealt with it, and this is not a bad business as long as it's selling for them. It's hard with these properties, because when they like GI Devils do, I don't think Dark Horse really did anything with GI Joe, but Devils do had it. There was a lot of energy behind it, but then it was like it's almost like when Bleeding Cool, or maybe it was Lying in the Gutter, when they lost it, they were like, yeah, you lost. People happy that people lost these things, and I always thought the Dark Horse Star Wars stuff. I think that's well, obviously Dark Horse had Predator, a bunch of aliens, and they had the. I mean, outside of DC doing Star Trek, like Dark Horse had really done a good run of stuff. Obviously, Marvel had done early on with Star Wars. They'd done some decent things with Star Wars, not so much with their Star Trek, even though they had great talent on it. But yeah, it's interesting that there's a book that kind of got people jumping around for a little while. I can't tell what this is from these covers, but they say that the Transformers are in there somewhere. So we'll see what happens.
Unless uh, unless you saw the variant cover with Jetfire or the second printing with Jetfire, there's no way to know. So uh, this you could go to the store and this could be right in front of you. And if you don't know the news about it, then you'll pass it over, and then
Mm-hmm.
it'll become the same thing. 4 months, 5 months later, you'll realize, oh, wait a minute, that's where it started. And then that drives the value of the book. But I don't know how good that. I don't know how sound business practice that is. I think something like the Transformers, GI Joe, you want people to know they're in the book.
Yeah, maybe so. I think, but I just think the it's kind of since we came out of the hard. I mean, ultimately, to get your maximum amount of sales at this point, they should know some things. The hard part is saying, well, this is this hey, firepower does about this, so we're going to order the same amount of firepower what it is now. What about when it first came out? Like, what is this? Give it that? No, no, we don't have that luxury of giving it that sort of send off. Like, okay. So, but yeah, I mean, you have, it would be. It's hard to say, because I guess when you get there and you just put the book of the month in the comic stores, and the comic guy telling you the Jetfire is in it, this is going to be a big crossover. And I guess sometimes that helps out when you're iffy on the title and the comic book guys. But I haven't talked to the comic book guys, and well, actually, I don't want to talk to the comic book guys. I think the ones, you know, um, I think as much fun as I had when I was a kid with them, which was always kind of cool from time to time. Whereas I think they spoiled. I enjoyed more than they spoiled it, but they did spoil. It was kind of a 30 to 40% of spoiling to the fun and the directing to books that were going to be worth something, or good reads. And most of the time, we didn't really talk about pricing, and more about good reads. When it was pricing, that
Those
was when
guys were
we
terrible.
huh?
They were terrible. They destroyed childhoods. They were terrible.
Not all of them. Just
Going in there as a kid, and it's like, what are you reading? You reading that trash? Oh, look at this. Totally undercut the market that they were supposed to be in. You're coming in there for a sense of wonder. They're telling you, look at these idiots running around here, these costumes. Oh, this is stupid. They're
I
telling you,
would say. Oh, sorry, keep going.
no, that's pretty much where they were at. That's and then they influenced all the kids. All the kids were like, okay, in order for this to be good, it's got to make logical sense to an adult. And of course, it doesn't make logical sense to an adult. They were terrible, terrible.
Well, I think one of the things I would say is one of the things was the thing of being in there. So one of the points was saying the first time I heard the phrase of you wait, you hesitate, you lose, meaning of the book. Should I buy it? Should I not? Type of deal. Now it could be on any book. You could wind up with the book that doesn't go anywhere it sells. And I think there was one. I guess it's not a amount, but it's not a large amount. And of course, I think the harder part was the reverse of it. The reverse is when you went to, they are selling you, here's a $10, I don't know, Walter Simonson, um, 337, right? 10, say $10, you buy it. You then go back to them and say, hey, I want to sell this for it. Like, I can, and not, we're not buying that now. Or look, that's not worth anything now. That's so put that away. Like, or you come back with your collection, and that's when they really would break people's hearts. And it's just like, good lord, you can at least say, well, I would either say we're not buying because you want to keep that dream, and that was the dream they were killing. That people, I mean, it felt like in our neighborhood, it felt like the store that we go to was where they were killing the kids reading comic books. It felt like, all right, people come back with their comic books and say, all your books are terrible. They're not going to be worth. They're worthless. And it's like saying, why am I even in this? I'm going to go chase some girls around. So it's like I forget all this nonsense, and the comic books became a secret habit where, and I'm not saying just secret for me, just something you don't always talk about. It's like people I know, they would talk, and this, but it felt like in Brooklyn is where it started, where they would trash your whole collection.
It was
But yeah,
nationwide.
hmm?
Somebody who sells comics, it was a nationwide thing. I mean, one of the things that I've noted is that I'll have grown men telling me how they're going to get comics out of the 25-cent bin or
Oh yeah.
50-cent bin, that type of stuff. And like 25-cent bin, 50 cent, that was for kids who didn't have any money. Okay. The fact that you're like, yeah, I'm not buying unless I can go get them out of this quarter bin or something of that nature. That's not a good thing. That shows that the person selling these things doesn't really value them either. And when it's time for you to turn them over, like we tried to do when we were kids, they were like, "Oh, that's not worth anything." The only books that, and I mean, this was like in the '80s, so the only books that really had any value were the books from the Silver Age, Golden Age. Those are the only, and we weren't getting our hands on any of that stuff. Those are the books that actually had value. You may have had some stuff that was hot that people wanted, and it was it was different to gauge interest than we would today, because there wasn't any place for you to go like eBay and see how things have been selling. It was really, how much people wanted it, and how hard it was to find those. But get these guys over here and like, oh, oh, these things should be cheap because you want it to be cheap, and then when it's time to turn it over, it's not worth anything, and you can't have a market where both the buyer and the seller doesn't believe that the product is worth anything. I said, when I sold toys, there's no 25-cent bin of toys. It just isn't. Toys
Well,
are like $10 to start. Nobody complains about it. You could be a grown man buying a toy or an action figure. Nothing. Action figure guys, chest all out, proud of what they got, complain about sculpts, this sort of stuff, no problem. Comics, ha, the amount of ridicule that you would get inside of the collectors club for comics is something that I never experienced anywhere else. When I would see it, I was like, this is crazy. But that was part of it. And then you get your changes with Wizard, but Wizard was reacting to how pretty much how the sellers were going about it, that you could only get money I mean, amongst collectors, we thought the stuff was like the stories. If you had a full run or you had these great stories, that's where you would get some stuff from. Maybe some trade value. And Wizard was just like, no, forget all of that. We're gonna treat these like baseball cards. You got your rookie card, you got the era card, you got this, the hard, you got your chase cards, and that is how they got driven up to this point. And you still have guys now. What gets me is that they drove kids out of the market with stunts like that. When you come over, we're not even going to tell you what's in the book. You drove kids out of the market. It's nothing but adults, and the adults complain These are people who are employed and they complain about the price of what they're buying. Ridiculous.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and I mean, I'm in agreement. The hard part of it, whereas people, it's really, it's just weird how, I don't know. I think I lost my train of thought with it. But yeah, I hear everything you're saying about the killing people's dreams, and yeah, it's. I was just because I was thinking, while you're talking, I was thinking about like the fact that you have X-Men #1, which is not worth anything, and X-Men #1 Gold, which is like worth like something because of, hey, we were able to figure out how to make this profitable.
What are
And
we talking about, bro?
well, we're talking about this new GI Joe comic book. Welcome back, Mars. How you doing, sir?
Good, but I'm just saying it'd be. I told you, don't jump me in the middle of a combo,
We're in the
bro.
middle of a conversation. We
And
started on the
that's
welcome
not
back,
good because it
sir.
starts off with my full name and everything, bro. You're gonna have to cut that out.
No, we don't. No one's gonna see it. You changed it in time.
No, I
Yeah,
did.
fix it in post.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, fix it in post, bro.
Okay, I'll fix it
How
in
goes it, bro?
post.
Oh shucks, let me put on my background before we start anything.
But we're still going, so.
Oh,
Yeah, we're still going.
let's start some.
Well, we're ending off on this one because it was just the sales of a new GI Joe
Yeah,
Transformer.
we were just talking about you.
I'm not worried, bro. Don't bother me.
But
See?
Hmm?
See, everybody who just tuned in, if you tuned in and you were watching the video all the way to the end, you got the return of the Spinnerack, the terrific trio. We're back again. You thought it was done, right? You thought it was done, right?
So let's end it here. I want you to tell me what I just gave you. If you remember what I just said, you should know what this is. What is this book here, Mars?
It says Void Rivals.
What is it? What is the key part of it? I just said it. I just said if you were listening to me.
No, I wasn't listening to you because you put me on right on. I told you don't do that. You know?
Well, this is what we were talking about was this surprise from a Transformers character, and now the joining of the GI Joe and Transformer universe. So it kind of went through an uproar, but it wasn't told to the realtors and the retailers. Sorry, retailers, and they're saying, hey. And there's things to the old school way where you'd find something cool, you find a Wolverine without it being heavily. I guess it was a little bit of promotion, a little side thing in Thor, but it wasn't things weren't heavily promoted back in the day. So, but this is the market. So if you want it to sell, but it's got some buzz around it. So that's what we were talking about.
I actually saw that comic and I was like, what the hell is it? You know what I'm trying to say? I saw Kirkman was behind it and I was like, but there's nothing there to say. So I was like,
So that answers it. I guess Bleeding Cool was right. There's no and Cal. If you don't know what the hell it is, even you got Robin Kirkman's name on the marquee, who's gonna buy it? So
it's funny because there's another comic called Astro Bots, I believe it's called, and I looked at that and I'm like, I think I'm gonna pick this one up. And I'm like, I could let me get #1, then I'll pick up the others. But I couldn't find the #1 or 2, so I said, you know what? I'll hold off on that till I can find the others and then run the whole series. But that I just walked right by. I said, Kirkman, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Is it a robot? Is it not a robot? Is it human? At least Astrobots, at least for sure it's sentient robots, So, and I was straightforward. It tells you that in the comics. And it seemed pretty good. I think that comic has been running from since March. It looked interesting. And I was like just this close to getting it, but I said, let me get the others, and I couldn't find the others.
So that answers it. Whereas I'd probably be in the same boat where I'd be walking past this book. But I did chance on. We're trailing off, but I'm glad you were able to bring this part back to where we started, because which was still related to the comic retailers and the past horrors that they used to do in spoiling books and destroying people's fun of comic books. But anyway, we're gonna close this out unless you have anything else to say, Mars.
Oh, glad to be back. Glad to be back, guys.
All right.
I said usually I'll say Spinnerack, and you guys will say
Spinnerack out.